Creating from the Heart, the Artistry of Living. I'm Suzy Vance, and I'm here with John Nekus, who's going to tell us an amazing story. John.
How are you, Suzy?
Let's just start at the beginning.
Okay.
Where were you born?
Where was I born?
Mm-hmm.
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me into this wonderful opportunity. So I certainly appreciate it. I've known you for a long time, but we haven't had a chance to chat. So this will be fun.
Here we are. Okay.
All right. I was born in Toronto, Canada.
You were.
Yeah.
And your parents were from?
Lithuania.
And
Born in Lithuania. My mom from a city called Kaunas, and my dad from a city called Panevėžys. And they immigrated during the war, World War II.
And I know you know, we all get curious sooner or later about our roots.
Correct.
What it is that made us who we are today. How did we get here?
Yeah.
Especially, how did you get from your parents' background in Lithuania to here?
Right, exactly.
And you got curious when?
Well, I grew up in Beverly Shores, and you're familiar with it.
And there's a nice Lithuanian
Community.
population there.
And one of the reasons they migrated there, because anyone that's been to Lithuania, it's on the Baltic Sea. There's sand dunes, there's, beach grass, beautiful, beautiful sea. So it kind of has a lot of similarities, shall I say, to the Baltic coast, and so that's why they're there.
Memory sticks.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, the parents, back to your question, you know what? I always say when you're 20 years old, you think you know everything.
Oh, yeah.
And you really don't know a heck of a lot. At least I didn't. But when you get a little older, you kind of start looking at life at different perspectives.
You get curious.
Yeah, you get curious. And so I knew the parents were from Lithuania. But I grew up at Beverly Shores on the beach, going to Michigan City High School, Indiana University. So I'm that's
yours.
All my friends were local friends, Americans, and so you've got that kind of one aspect, but then you've got this aspect at home, which is we're speaking in Lithuanian. We're the food's a little bit different, and the culture is certainly different, and that was kind of normal to me. But then, as I said, when you're 20 years old, you think you know a lot, and then when I got a little older, maybe mid-30s or so. Maybe a little older, I started thinking about, well, you know what, where the heck did I come from, and what is all that about? So then that's when I started getting curious and flew over there about 20 years ago for the first time. And so I said, okay.
Where did you go when you flew over?
I flew over to a place called Klaipėda. The capital of Lithuania is Vilnius. But I flew over to a place called Klaipėda, which is on the Baltic Sea, massive port, huge port city with, a harbor, and the dunes are there. There's a national seashore and everything else. Why do we go there? Because I knew that the parents said, well, your grandfather was a naval captain. Or no, he just said a captain. A captain. So what? What did I know? Maybe a fishing boat, maybe a sailboat or something. And that I do a lot of sailing here. Grew up on Lake Michigan.
It's in your bones.
Yeah, it's in my bones. It's I do a lot of racing with Hobie Fleet and everything else here locally. So that's kind of where I grew up and was drawn to that. So I said, okay, well, he was a captain. Let's go find out about this. So that's one of the reasons we went there. Flew to Klaipėda, crazy Americans, tourists, thinking, okay, let's see if we can find someone that might know something about might know something about my grandfather. So that's why we went there.
All right. And this was what year?
This is probably, maybe 20 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, about 20 years ago.
And so you get here, and what happens next?
Okay, well, we arrive, and I remember it vividly. It was a July afternoon, beautiful sunshine, not a cloud in the sky, warm. We land, rent a car with my brother, and we said, okay, well, let's go by the port. And so we're going, the big cranes and everything else. Anyone who's been to Port of Indiana, that's, similar to that. So here we are driving down the street next to the port, looking for someone that might know my grandfather.
And your grandfather's name is?
Adomus Daugatus. And Adam, that's my middle name, Adam. So here we are, like a bunch of tourists. And so we make one pass, come back. And then out of the corner of my eye, I notice a group of elderly folks in uniforms in this building. And I go, remember to pull over. Let's go see what's maybe, so we get closer, and they're all in naval uniforms, captain. So I go get out of the car and go up to one person, one officer there, captain, standing there. I says, and this was in Lithuanian. Back then I was speaking broken Lithuanian, Americanized Lithuanian, I should say. So I said, excuse me, I've got a kind of a crazy question for you. And he looks at me, he said, well, what's that? And he says, well, my grandfather was a captain here, and we're trying to find we just arrived here, we're here for 2 hours. We're just trying to figure out if someone may have heard of him and could maybe tell us about it. And he looks at me and he says, what's the name? And I tell him, my name's John Nekus. He said, no, not yours, your grandfather's. And I say, last name. And I said, Daugatus. And he goes, Adomus Daugatus? And I go, yeah. And he says, and you are? I says, I'm the grandson. And he says, you just arrived here? I said, 2 hours ago. So you're a tourist. And he says, looking for your history. I said, come with me. So he takes me upstairs.
I love this magic.
He takes me upstairs, sits me down at this round table, and he says, you know what? We just raised enough money. You got to understand, 20 some years ago, Lithuania just became independent from the Soviet Union after the Berlin Wall fell.
20 years ago then.
Yeah, yeah. So then, he says, we just raised enough money to, make this book, and it's on our naval history and our captains. So he sets me down, opens up the book, onto the second page. There's a photo of my grandfather. He says, here's your roots. You found them. And I was stunned, so it turns out, if you can believe it.
I can.
Well, I'm there for literally 2 hours.
Right.
And just happened to be there at the time. Why were they all there? It happened to be the harbor master, the head guy of the port there. It was his birthday. So they're there on a Friday afternoon celebrating his birthday. And here we
come along.
Yeah, and we come along. So they took us downstairs. There was about 30 or 35 of these captains there, and they introduced us. They said, well, we're all here to celebrate the birthday of the harbor master here. And they go, guess what? I guess my grandfather was the second harbor master, in the 1930s in this summer. So he said, we're here to celebrate his birthday. The grandkids of Adomus Daugatus just happened to show up and celebrate with us. So we had an amazing opportunity, an amazing couple hours, and several shots of vodka, and
Good.
And it was amazing. They it turns out, not only was he a captain, my grandfather, and again, that's where I found all this out with these guys. They said, well, John, do you know about your grandfather? I said, yeah, he was a captain. He says, no. He was the captain of our first warship, modern warship, for the country of Lithuania. The president back in those days, in the 1930s, was President Smetona. So, small country. They were able to procure buy a warship that was used for coastal defense, and it was named after the president, Smetona. And my grandfather was the first captain of that ship, if you can believe it. Then they tell me he was the second harbor master, and then he also started the naval school, captain school, in a country where all those captains. He says, we're all captains because of your grandfather. So, and they said, there's a museum here, a nautical museum. So they told me where it is. The next day I went there, and there's my grandfather's photo on the wall with, the ship and so forth. So it was a stunning revelation. It was an absolute stunning revelation, and to be able to be with people that are had such reverence and respect for for him and the history, their nautical history, and it just, they wanted to know. They knew he had emigrated to Canada after during the war, so they wanted to know how was life in Canada and what were his later years were when I knew them, and I wanted to understand. Okay, well, tell me about it, everything in the 1930s and late 20s and 30s about the naval history and so forth. So it was just a fascinating discussion.
Okay. So I'm given to believe that the adventure didn't stop there.
Yeah, well, that's they never do they?
No, something got you.
Well, I'm just sitting there. So we went to the museum the next day. I see his photo, then I go, in Lithuania, there's a lot of cities in Europe have these old towns. They're there for hundreds of years. So, Klaipėda has a real nice old town there. So I'm just sitting there in a little pub, having švetrys, is a very tasty Lithuanian beer. I'm having this beer, and I'm just reflecting on what just happened in the last 24 hours.
Right.
And so I come to find, here's my grandfather. He's someone that evidently is somewhat important.
A big deal.
and he's captain of this ship. So then I asked him, "Where's his ship?" I said, "Well, during the war, end of World War II, the Russian army came through. They took all the navies of Latvia, Estonia, and Lithuania." So it was a Russian crew on the ship. It was coming from in the North Baltic Sea. It was coming from Helsinki to Tallinn on June 11th, 1945. Now, of course, I didn't know any of that back then, but I've done a little bit of research since then. And a couple of minutes before noon, a German U-boat at the end of World War II saw the ship coming and shot a torpedo, sank it. At the end of World War II, 1945, and there it was somewhere at the bottom of the Baltic Sea since 1945.
Still there.
Still there. So that's exactly what I'm sitting there having this beer, and I said, you know what? That's pretty interesting. It's his first warship, and I said, you know what? We got to go find that warship. So that's that. I had that kind of epiphany, so that's what I did. I said, all right, we got to go figure out. Now, I've got a technology background. I've done some project work and said that, so I know how to put some things together. But do I know anything about underwater archaeology? Of course not. And how do you do that? But,
But that didn't stop you.
No, not at all. So I said, all right, well, we just got to figure out. And lo and behold, I started pulling this thread. You start sometimes pull this thread, and I got to tell you, Suzy, so when I started pulling this thread, you cannot believe the journey that I've been on. And so I'm very thankful. I've met a number of people, went on 3 expeditions to the North Baltic Sea, and about 2017 we found the ship.
Oh!
Yeah, we found
Where
the ship.
is it?
It's exactly, if you draw a line, if you go to a map, you draw a line from Helsinki, Finland to Tallinn, Estonia. It's right across the Baltic Sea, the Gulf of Finland. If you draw a line, go about halfway between those 2 cities, and that's where it is.
There it is.
It's sitting on the bottom in 200 feet of water, 70 meters, and it's upright. It's upright, right on the bottom. Now the first 20 feet or so have been were blown off by the torpedo, but it's perfectly intact. The rest of the hull is perfectly intact, sitting upright. So we went out there with sonar image, with a couple. That's a whole other story. Is how we got out there. How did we organize? The group get us out on, it's not easy to go on an expedition and figure out, all the permitting and everything else. So I was so fortunate to come across, and now they're really good friends. One in particular, Dr. Vlada Zulkus, who was with Klaipėda University. There's a university there in Lithuanian Klaipėda, and they've got an underwater archaeology department. So
Fortunate.
He's been spending the last 40 years doing sonar imaging and archaeological work on the Baltic Sea, because under Soviet times, under Russian occupation, obviously the West couldn't get access to it. But, that North Baltic Sea from World War II is literally a graveyard of ships, of planes, and even before that, So the bottom line, he's been doing research in that, and I hooked up with him, and then we put together a team of his naval historians and engineers, and raised some money and went out on expeditions.
Okay, so you found it.
Yeah.
What's next?
Well, I should have brought some images. I've got some things here. I brought some things here. First of all, let me show you a couple things here that I brought with me. This is the ship. I can show you here. This is the ship we're talking about. So that's the warship, the Smetona.
What we'll do is take those pictures and insert them in the video.
Oh, okay. There you go.
That's okay.
So I've got a couple photos, but then the important photo, at least to me anyway, is this one. This is my grandfather, Adomas Daugardas, okay? And you can notice the captain's bars on his shoulders, right? So before he died, he gave them to me. And here they are from, the 1930s, when he was a captain on this warship. And so he gave them to me. He said, John, on his deathbed, or a couple of days before he died, he said, you know what, John, these are important to me. He said, he gave them to me. He said, can you hang on to them for me? Take care of them for me.
How old were you?
When he died, I was probably 20. 19, 20, something like that.
And little did you know that they were the ticket to your future.
Well, I'm 20 years old, and as I said, you think you know anything, and so I put them in a box, somewhere in a closet, and there they sat for 15 years or so, until I started pulling this thread. and then I started pulling this thread, and I said, wait a minute, he gave me something. And I went back, and fortunately I found this. And then I went and found this box that I keep them in, and it's got a nice tree of life on the front of it, and so I keep them there. And I, ironically, I took this box and those with me on the expedition, and looking for his ship, and it was a surreal experience.
It's like your permission slip.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's permission slip. I kind of look at it. He's guiding me.
Oh, yes.
He's showing me the way that, he said, John, your story's not done yet. You need to go, again, I've done a lot of sailing on Lake Michigan and everything, so I love the sea and the ocean and in the lake here. But something that says, John, I've got another journey in mind for you. And he took me there, and 2 hours from being there, and I can't get over that. I meet these captains, I learn all this, and then started doing, got in contact with some people at the university, and 2 expeditions later, we were able to find it. And we went on, and in fact, here's an article I can show you. I think that's the expedition. It's called Lithuanian Heritage. They did a article. That's the sailboat called Brabender, and that's the team we put on that went on that expedition. And I forgot this. On the inside cover, here are the sonar images of what it looks like today on the bottom. So you can see the front of it's kind of blown off. That's the front, but the rest of it's upright, fully intact. In the center there, that's the engineering drawings of the ship that we had with us to make sure that we could validate that. So back to your question. What is next? So we've got the sonar image, right? Which is great. We validated it. But then I'm sitting there thinking, you know what? We've got some great technology, so we need to figure out a way to go down back to the site and shoot some video, some digital video, high resolution video, and then create a documentary of maybe some 3D imaging of the ship, because there's a naval museum there. It's a historically significant ship for the country. Why not go back there and minimally survey the wreck site, do a little bit better than just a sonar image, get some digital video, and maybe make a film, and then have that, and ideally maybe pull some artifact off of it so we can put it in the museum. So I went there a year ago for a conference that I was attending, I wrote a book on technology, so they invited me to speak, so I'm there, okay. Did the kind of the obligations that I needed to do for there, but my real passion was, I got to get a hold of Dr. Zulkus. So I'm in Vilnius at this conference, got done with that, rented a car, drove up to Klaipėda. I said, Doctor, I call him up, Doctor, I'm in town. I says, are you available for dinner? And he says, sure, come on up. So, I said, how you doing? How's your health? Everything good? Okay. I said, well, what are you doing now? And he said, well, I'm kind of retired, and I got an office over at the university, but I'm, and I said, how's your health? And he says, it's okay. I said, so you're not doing a lot? And he says, no, we're not really. I'm keeping busy. I said, I said, you know what? Somehow fate brought us together 15 years ago. And I said, we've done some amazing journeys together. We found this ship. I said, our journey's not done yet. And he kind of looks at me. And I says, we got to go back to that wreck site, and we got to get some video, some high resolution video. And here's a guy that's kind of sitting there. Suddenly his eyes lit up. And it's kind of like he just perked up, and he says, and he looks at me, yes, we do.
A reason to be alive.
So then he said, John, you're not going to believe this, because one of the gentlemen that's in here that was on our expedition the last time is, where is he? Here's this photo. I'm sorry, this center gentleman right here. That's when we were doing looking at the first sonar images coming back when we found on the computer, and that's one of the naval guys that were with us. So when we found it in 2017, so that gentleman there is a guy named, he's a naval historian, Valdas Rukutis, and turns out he's in the parliament now, their Congress. So he's elected into there. And so Dr. Zulkus, we're sitting there having dinner. I just tell him we need to go back. He said, John, you're not going to believe this, but Valdas Rukutis called me today. He said, I said, I'm not making this up. He called me today, and he said, you know what? I said, we need to think about going back to that site. And why? Because 2027 is the 100-year anniversary since Lithuania got this ship. Okay? And it would be nice if we could go this year back to that site to do some video work and then put together a documentary so we can have a commemoration in 2027 at the Parliament or wherever, commemorating the 100th anniversary of this ship. He called Dr. Zulkas that day. Excuse me. So here I show up then the same way, and so we shook hands. I said, great. So that's what's in the planning stages now, is to go back this August. We're organizing that, and one of our key hurdles or challenges in order to do that is either we need divers or an ROV, remote operated vehicle, or a submarine. Right, they make these small submarines, right. 2-3 person submarines to go down. And so I talked to Dr. Zulkus last week, in Lithuania. I gave him a call, and I said, okay, wait,
Where are we?
where are we? And I had talked to him a couple months ago, and he said, John, we don't have that capability or that technology here in Lithuania. I said, So I said, well, let me work on that. Over the last 3 months, I've been kind of doing, scouring contacts and people and whatnot. And lo and behold, there's a company in the Netherlands. It's called U-Boat Works. What do? They make and sell 2-3-man submersibles. I've been in contact with this company now for 10 years because I had in the back of my mind, well, at some point in time, maybe we did, but they did it for selling. They didn't lease it. Well, guess what? Now they lease these submarines. So the bottom line is,
And it would be a major feather in their cap if you used one of those to go do what you're talking about. 'cause
Exactly.
they could
market it. Exactly. So we're in the process. I just had this is literally 2 days ago. I had a conversation with those folks, and then I called up Dr. Zulkas, and I said, Dr. Zulkas,
I found our boat.
I said, I think I've solved our problem with the finding the equipment. Then the next problem is okay, I talked to the U-Boat Works folks, great, they can provide the submarine, but then there's the challenge of getting the submarine from either a truck
Right.
or land and out to the wreck site. So you need a ship. Now, we were on a sailboat where we could put a sonar, but so I talked to the U-Boat. I said, you're going to have to figure out how you can sit there and get a service ship. And I said, all right, let me work on that. And so I called Dr. Zulkas up. I said, okay, I think I've got us a submarine. Can you help me out?
Can we get it there?
Yeah, getting it out on the water. He goes to me, he says, John, you're not going to believe this. You won't believe who called it. I just got this call. You can't make this up. He gets a call today from a colleague at Klaipėda University that says, you know what? Suddenly he says, the government and the military, since it's a historical significance, since it's a 100-year anniversary, they want to help, and they've created a project to kind of go and document this ship, shoot some video. And he says, let me call them. Maybe they can help us. So he calls them up. And he says, I'll call you tomorrow. And that was yesterday. He calls me back yesterday. Guess what? They have a research ship with the university. So they've got this research ship. Bottom line, it's amazing. And so the pieces somehow are falling in place where we found there's a project in place with the government and military. I found a submarine where we think we can get it. Now, obviously, there's costs involved. We got to go through all that. There's permitting involved. But at least the pieces are starting.
All the pieces are there.
Are
You just gotta pull them together.
Coagulating through, and I don't know why. I can't explain that. I can't explain how you sit there. I happen upon being in the country for 2 hours and have on this. I can't explain how I call Dr. Zulkas and say, hey, I want to, and then have a meeting. And he says, guess what?
I'm ready.
Our colleague called today. And, so this stuff is just somehow happening, and the pieces are falling in place. And it's just a journey that I never thought I'd be. I'm here. I'm like you, grew up here and everything else. But here I've suddenly.
But without you, it never would have happened.
Well, I don't know about that, but put it this way. I'll say this. I had an interest. And that's the key thing I guess I would suggest to you, is if you've got an interest and a passion, pull that string. If you pull that, now other people will tell you that you're crazy. You shouldn't do that. Why are you wasting your time?
Right.
And this and that. You got better things to do. How much money can you make, doing this? None of that care. What I had a genuine interest, because this is kind of cool. This is kind of neat. Maybe I'll learn something along the way. And guess what? Somehow I found myself on a ship doing sonar imaging in the middle of the Baltic Sea. And I forgot to tell you, our second or our first unsuccessful voyage, the Lithuanian Navy allocated a warship. So I spent 3 days on a Lithuanian warship going out looking for this ship with the Lithuanian crew. So at the end of the day, that's really kind of the takeaway for me is if you have a thought, if you have an idea, if you have a passion, and you know, life sometimes can get in the way. You know it, I know it, this and that.
Well, you can let it get in the way.
Yeah, you can get. But boy, I kind of something in me pulled me to this, and I started pulling this thread. And I can tell you, the journey is incredible. It's still not over. I'm still doing it, and it's exciting. And I'm just fortunate to be a part of it. And I've met some amazing people along the way. And the journey, I'll give you an update if you're interested. I'll give you an update where we are. But we're planning to go back in August with fingers crossed, and maybe I'll be in a submersible this time. 200 feet down, and maybe from me to that table over there, 20 feet away from the bridge of where my grandfather was the captain standing. So, and I'll have his captain's bars with me on that submersible, but that we'll see. That would be an interesting opportunity if I could put that together.
Makes my heart sing.
So that's the story. That's kind of an interesting journey, and it's not over yet, but...
So, just out of curiosity,
yeah.
If somebody wanted to know more,
Mm-hmm.
how would they contact you? And if somebody was moved to make a contribution to this effort?
That's great. Thank you. That's a great. They can contact me, John Nekus, and we can provide contact details.
We'll put it on the film.
Yeah, first and last name, johnnekus@gmail.com. I also, during this whole process, put together or created a foundation in Lithuania in my grandfather's name. So it's the, Adomas Daugardas Foundation, just for that purpose. So there is an official foundation.
Is there a link to that?
No, there is. We've got. I need to do a better job of putting a link in that. But I just had my hands full to just create the foundation. Creating a foundation in Eastern Europe is not the easiest thing to do. So, but again, that was just one of the things along the way. And so there's that vehicle or donations. We can put some people in contact with, for this specific project or Klaipėda University. So yeah, the short answer is this is going to take some money to rent a submarine and then have a service ship to be able to go out there is not going to be cheap. But we got this far, we've figured out how to do it, and if people are moved and want to participate or help us, that would be fantastic. And the other thing is, if someone, a university program here in the States, I know there's a lot of technical programs, whether it's in Purdue, I think University of Texas, some other, there's a whole subculture of this underwater archaeology groups out there. So if you know of someone that's maybe a PhD student or something that wants to participate in this, or they have access to an ROV, remote operated vehicle, we need one of those that we could then send down also to do digital mapping of this. So we're putting together all the planning and the infrastructure, from a logistical perspective, permitting to get us out there, get us the submersible, get us the permits, the ships, the port ships, put all that in place. But boy, if someone else is intrigued and wants to participate and they have technical expertise or access to an ROV and want to participate in that and help us map this, and do some of the digital imaging, or someone from a computer technology perspective can help us create a three-dimensional computer imaging of it, then boy, we'd really be interested in talking to you about that and to be able to do that. So those are some avenues. Please reach out to me, and we're happy to have that conversation.
Great. Oh my goodness. What a joy.
It's life is fun. Sometimes it can be a challenge, but life is fun. And this has been a passion of mine. I never thought I'd be doing this, believe me. But here I am, finding myself, and it. You can see I'm amped. It's exciting. It kind of is interesting to be able to have the opportunity to participate in that. And
Definitely lit you up.
yeah. So thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for sharing this, and I'll keep you up to date on what transpires.
Great. That's fabulous. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much. Thank you.
John Nekus. See you next time.